Bamrick. I'm the Director of Food and Beverage Operations for the Wilson Conference Center Group. Is anybody in here not in sports management or hospitality? Is everybody, what's your major, sir?
Archaeology.
Interesting, that was always my passion. I became a chef. Something went wrong there, huh? But what I want to talk to you about is, this is pretty much, my time is for you today, so kind of give you a little bit of like, we'll talk about my path to where I am today and the different schools I went to and the experience I acquired, and also talk a little bit about service recovery, because in all of our future industries we're going to be going into, as well as archaeology, you always have a client that you, whether it's a boss or a client in a hotel or a sports guest, that we have to sometimes do recovery on, which in our industry is how well do you recover a bad experience for somebody? What can you do? Well, I'll give you some scenarios that have actually occurred in the last few years in my life that have happened and how you resolve them, and make you more comfortable with that. And later on, you'll get more of this as school goes on too. So, I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, and I went to college in New York City and in Boston. I graduated from the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York. And then I went to, prior to that, I was going to a four-year school in Buffalo, New York. Let me back up a little bit. My first job at 15 was in food and beverage. As a cashier at a fast food place, then I went to a grillman, then I was working as a busboy at a hotel, then back to a restaurant, and kind of just hopped around. So when the time I started my freshman year of college, I was a banquet captain at the Hilton in Buffalo, New York, which is a brand new hotel, just opened about a year now. Prior to that, I was working at a bank after school and weekends. Those days, banks open on Saturday, as a bank teller. And you need something? You need to pass it around or check it? Oh, it's on. Okay, it's going around. So my father was an engineer on the project at the Buffalo Hilton, and said, would you be interested in helping them open up their property? I know you got out of food and beverage, and you're banking now, and you're working days, but they need some help in the evenings. And I said, you know, Dad, I got out of that whole food and beverage thing. I like working days. I don't want to deal with, I'm going to school and working days. It's all good. And he's like, well, just give him a hand. So I went there just quickly. Then I became full-time there, and I was realizing that you make the money in the banking business, and my 2 weeks of pay from the bank equaled my 1 week of paid tips from the hotel, so easily that was a quick change. So I did that. So I went to school for 2 years, and then I was working at a private dining club in Buffalo, New York as a waiter, and then they would bring me in to help them prep food on weekends, and then go back on the dining floor and serve. So I did that for a couple of years, and I decided to go to the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York. So applied there, and it's an interesting program. It's a AOS degree, Applied Occupational Science. It's 36 months. And at the time, you go right through, there's no summer break, Christmas break, Easter break. You're on a block system, A through Z. So every 3 weeks, you're in a class, one class for 8 hours a day, learning anything from skill development to R&D to international cuisines to service to alcohol. And at the end of the 3-week class, you're in from 8 to 2, you're also serving food, cooking food in your kitchens for all the 5 restaurants on campus, so it's kind of like a grind. So after you do that, you take a written and a practical test, and depending on, it's pass or fail. And you go to the next block, which would be B and on up. So I did that, and after about 14 months, you do a internship. So in the Hudson Valley at that time was all IBM corporate offices. So I worked at IBM's Country Club, did that. I had worked with a chef that's approved to, I was associated there, and they had, everything was done from scratch, and it was really nice. And then graduated a year later, moved to Boston for a company called Boston Restaurant Associates, where they had owned a pizza concept called Pizza Regina. They also owned 13 restaurants in the Back Bay of Boston. It was all upscale, so they hired me as a startup manager. So I would go into a restaurant, start do the job fair, do the hiring, the training, help with the design of the setup of the property, stay 6 months and go to the next property. It was all within the city of Boston. So my wife and I were there, and we had our first 2 children there, and then I was interviewing in Chicago to do a job as a maitre d' for top of the Hancock Tower. And my wife thought it was more like living in Buffalo, New York. Let's go back there. I didn't want to go back, so we left Boston kicking and screaming. I did, and went to Buffalo, New York, and we stayed there for a few years. And then I did the country club management thing, and then I had started my own off-premise catering with a little gourmet grocery at an office park. So we were doing that for 4 or 5 years, and that's 18-hour days, 7 days a week, and it's a lot of work. But it led me to meet Jeremy Jacobs, who owns Delaware North Companies in Buffalo, New York, which owns all the major racetracks in the South, including Southland Park. So he said to me, "Hey, why don't you come to West Memphis, Arkansas?" And I said, "Where's that?" I'm looking at the map, and being a Yankee from New York and Boston, I thought, "Oh gosh, it's Arkansas." I always heard of it. I never. So I kept saying, "Is West Memphis in Tennessee, or is it in Arkansas? Where is it?" So sent me there for a 2-year assignment as a director of food and beverage. My goal to working in hotels and restaurants, I worked for some food and beverage directors that were really great and more that were really poor. They had no knowledge of food that came out of the kitchen. They knew all about food costs and beverage costs and how to serve guests. They didn't know if a cook came out of the kitchen, he could just BS his whole way through something, and I felt as a server that I couldn't get validation for any questions I had or anything needed to be done. The food director couldn't answer anything happening behind the kitchen doors. So I wanted to become a food and beverage director. That's what my goal was. So come out of the CIA, I was doing some cooking and managing, and I got to Southland Park. It was a 2-year assignment. The company I worked for was on a big purchasing acquisition for racetracks throughout the South, and they were doing the whole racino thing. So if a company had a racetrack, I'd say we're going to try and convert it to a casino. So my goal was to go to Southland Park first and convert that, but ironically, it was the last project we converted. I went to Arizona, Finger Lakes, Aqueduct, Wheeling Downs. Over the next 3 or 4 years, I would travel on and off, and still come back to Memphis, of course. And then I became the general manager of Southland Park, and we got the gaming initiative pushed through to be a casino. One or two casinos allocated in Arkansas at Southland Park in West Memphis and Oak Lawn Park in Hot Springs, Arkansas. That was interesting because I got the chance to be a lobbyist for the company and help lobby, push gaming through. So I did that till so I was there from 2-year assignment became 11 years. So then in 2007, they were trying to merge together the gaming aspect employees and the racetrack employees to pretty much downsize. We had 500 some employees, so we had to let that go through attrition. People, if they were retiring, we just weren't replacing them. So it was coming down. It came down that I could let go of. We had anybody under 15 years could be offered severance pay. So I thought, So we started. People were going. We lost 60 or 70 employees through severance pays. They took the severance pay after so many years they worked. They could leave, and I was there 11. So I thought, well, wait a minute. They said, oh no, we're not at your level. And I said, well, I might be ready to. There was a guy ahead of me who was the president of the company who was about to retire in 2 or 3 years. I wanted him to have his space, and I was really anxious to get back in the hotels. I got through racing. I learned what I liked out of it. I love the hospitality side, but I got into more the admin side of it, on the gaming and the percentages and all that. So I went back to Boston to interview and flew back to interview there. And a friend of mine called me in Memphis and said, listen, there's a job at the Peabody. This is in 07 as a restaurant operations manager. So I said, okay. And I said, it may not be, maybe a little bit beneath you, but check it out. So I think I told this story to Chris. I interviewed on a Monday afternoon, and the GM was like, okay, we got several candidates that we're looking at. We'll probably call you in 2 or 3 weeks. I said, I won't be available in 2 or 3 weeks. I'm making a decision in 2 weeks. So drove home, and his secretary Caroline called me and said, can you come back for a drug test? I said, today? I just got back to Germantown. She was like, yeah. I said, I'll be in the morning. So I drug tested. I started the next day, which made me kind of nervous. It's like, that's a quick start. But what's happening is they were going through a lot of changes with management at the time. The market was good in '07, money was good. Then we had the '08 crash, recession, I guess you want to call it. And the food and beverage director and his partner moved out to Santa Fe, and they left an opening for me, and I took the position. We had 40 food and beverage managers or assistants, and we pared it down to 20. And what I did, I created value for myself. So I worked there for another 9 years. And how I got here is Kimmons Wilson and Tom Johnson, who's the director of the Wilson Comp Group. They approached me in December of 13 and said, we have been bringing our students to the Peabody for cooking classes. I think some of you take the cooking classes here. They originally started at Peabody back in that year. So we did that for about 2 semesters. And he said, I want that program to be at our hotel, the Holiday Inn at the U of M, and we want you to help coordinate that happening. So they said, what we can do for you is, our food and beverage director and chef is leaving. We can create a role for you as the director of food and beverage operations. And when it was Terry, was it Terry then? No, it was Terry Albright was about to leave. Terry Albright was here. You could start working with them eventually once we get going. So we finished one more semester at the Peabody, and then I think Radish came, and we started bringing the 20, 50 class into the kitchen. Then this last year we were doing the operations class, bringing students to all the sales, marketing, housekeeping, kitchen, front of the house, and the front desk, which we're doing this year, and it's nice to see it come to fruition, so it took us a little bit of time to do that. I also taught 2 class in Introduction to Wine and Spirits, which is really nice. I really enjoyed doing that. It was really a great experience, and I'm so happy. Our classes are always so full, you know. On Monday night you're coming in, and at 4 to 7 you're learning about wine and spirits, so it was good. So that's where I am. So I'm responsible for the food and beverage for this building, the Foam Executive Center across the street, and across from the FedEx Institute. We manage those buildings as a conference center, which is a different animal than a hotel, because we only have 84 rooms here and 50 across the street. A lot of you don't know there's rooms across the street, but we are a very strange dynamic for revenue. Food and beverage here exceeds our room revenue. So we make more money in food and beverage than we do in rooms, because we may have at a given time like 18, 19 luncheons taking place over those 3 buildings. You know, so being a conference center, your breakfast breaks, lunch, afternoon breaks, maybe dinner, and we also have the social catering over here. So the bulk of our business, though, is conferences. So what's happened since I've been here? Updating menus. The Wilson are wonderful with employees. They have a great reputation for taking care of their employees. So we have never terminated employees in my time here. But when someone does leave, we move people around. Like when I started here, the restaurant had 2 managers and 2 supervisors. Now we're just down to 2 supervisors. It's a little small restaurant. We don't need to have all that labor. So your job as a manager is to look how you can. We'll talk about a little more about how you can generate more revenue for your owners to justify really your job. You know, I mean, you think about that. I worked for GM years ago. Said if you're making $50,000 a year, what have you done this month to generate $50,000? Think about that. You know, we're comfortable in a salary position. You can come in and do your job. You know, when you have to depend upon making money and putting heads in beds, it's a team effort in the hospitality industry. So it's been nice. I like working with Aramark as the student feeding partner across the street that we work with. We've got a symphony hall. We built a couple parking lots over in the next 2 years, I guess, and then they want to build across the street in the corner a alumni center, which those opportunities more for revenue to come in for us as well. So the life of a food and beverage person. So you know, I wanted to be a food and beverage director, and I finished school in 1987, college, so gives you an idea how old I am. And
You're a kid.
yeah, I had in the back of my mind I always wanted to become a food and beverage director. So I was moving around. I told you those jobs. So I was at Southland Park, working there about 2 or 3 years, I think. Still the assistant, still the director of food and beverage, but didn't really stop to think that I got in there. You know? So my secretary came in. We had secretaries those days, and she put my mail on the desk, and the mail kind of flew across the desk, and I grabbed the magazine on top of it, and it said, Dan Bamrick, director of food and beverage. I'm like, wow, I guess I'm here. And it was like 9 years later. I just didn't really think about it happening. So I kind of reflected on how I got here. You know, it's like I never would have thought I would have. You know, my mission was to go to 4-year school, get an architect's degree, you know, in New York, and just be happy and move on. And I didn't like that program. I went for liberal arts the first year, then I tried to change around, and took off a year, then went back, got married, went to culinary school. So a lot of things have happened, but I kept my eye on the fact that I want to be an F&B director. And my avenue to be one of the most successful was to be a chef. I wanted the chef's degree. And nowadays, people are coming in out of culinary schools. I was the first person to graduate from my class to be offered front of the house manager position with a culinary degree. And now the majority, now that school has now gone to a 4-year degree, and all their students coming out there are mostly going to be in management. Very few chefs are coming out there. They still have the chef program, but they're putting it's a separate program as opposed to food and beverage management. So it's interesting. It's an interesting path. I love every day come to work. No matter where I work, I love it. I love to come in and come to work every day. I love going out to work every day too. You know, I have to work, but I enjoy. To me, it's like I read a book years ago called I can't think of the name. It was written by Lee Iacocca, Managing Change. And it's a really good book if you ever come across it, read it. But the whole gist of the book is a manager manages change. He comes into work and manages the staff and the environment to produce revenue at the highest level they possibly can. So let's bring it to a simplest form. If you say Vinny comes to work and he's a waiter at the Westin. He walks into work. If the BEOs for the menus are the same every day, the staff comes into work every day at the same time, no one's late, the time clock works, the food is being delivered, someone doesn't call out, it's a perfect day. You don't need a manager. Because think about it, the first person you call when something goes wrong in your job is your supervisor. You search him out at work, or your manager or director, whoever it's going to be. And the most caring one's going to be willing to touch. I always touch every day. I'm like, make eye contact. Hey, how you doing today? Need anything? You okay? Oh, my computer's not working. And they won't say anything unless you ask them. You know. And they know from working with me, I'm going to ask them, what do you need? Tell me. You know. And just keep it short. I don't care what happened. What can I do to fix it so I do not cause a ripple in the service for the guests? That's the main thing at the end of the day. And when the guest leaves here, doesn't know there's a problem, they were served, they were happy, you know, that's a good day. Then you look at the issues with our problems, where there's recovery. Like, say, for instance, a guest checks in a hotel, get a big checkout, the rooms aren't turned. Y'all think of yourselves when you're traveling, and what's it today now? I mean, the nonsense with the airport, and you're on the road maybe 7 hours, whether you're flying or driving, you get to a place, you got your luggage behind you, you know, and no one even cares anymore for you. You walk up and get to the front desk, and they say, oh, Mr. So-and-so, your room's not ready. It's going to be ready in a couple hours. And you're like, oh, no. And why don't you go have a drink at the bar? Why don't you get a sandwich? We'll take care of you. And as opposed to just say, come back in 2 hours, let me give you your cell phone, your number, you know. You own that problem to make sure you contact room service and says, Mr. Jones's room, well, it'll be ready. He's waiting, you know. And they usually stop and take care of those problems that happen right away. But we also have a follow-through, so I have to secure. Okay, so you're telling me 15 minutes room to be ready, or half an hour? Half an hour. So I'm going to call him in 25 minutes. Where are we with that? I need to get this guy in his room. You own the problem. So the customer sees you at the end of the day, end of that event. You get into his room. He's happy. You resolved his concern. You know, it's when we don't get back to guests. It can be an issue. And being in food and beverage, we have a lot of issues with customers' perception of what food should be, like what a steak is medium rare versus medium, how it should look. You know your customers and what they're ordering, and we talk about repeating the order back. Yes, Mr. Jones, you want the wedge salad with a side of white steak wine. You want your steak medium rare, what kind of potatoes you want. You repeat it back to them. You bring it to the table. Here's your steak medium rare, Mr. Jones. Does that look good to you? Check it out for us. If not, we'll take care of it for you. But then the biggest mistake I see in any service industry, in a food and beverage environment, when the server never comes back to check on the table within 2 or 3 minutes. Even if you just make eye contact, I look across the room at Chris and I just can shake my head and you okay? I'm good. Or you walk up and say, so you have everything you need? No, I need some hot sauce, I need some ketchup. This is cooked medium rare, I want it medium well. Because if they have to wait, and what always happens, the manager gets a message from the customer, I wait half an hour. Oh, come on, really? Maybe 10 minutes? But to them, it's like half an hour. It goes up and up. So in those situations, you can't, you have to then take the steak away from the customer. It has to be cooked to their degree of perfection. But the other guests are still eating. So that's kind of uncomfortable, You don't want to take all their food away and recook it as well and reheat it. So then it comes up to what are you going to do to take care of the guy? Are we going to buy you dessert, sir? Give you a glass of wine? Are we going to comp your dinner? Depends how. There's different degrees of I had a guy that worked for me when I was director at the Peabody Hotel, and we had Chez Philippe's, it was our French restaurant there. And it's $125 a person for a 3-course dinner, including wine. And the chef that day, it was the fall, he did a pulled sugar with green apple dye. And I was off that day. And the assistant manager was working in that restaurant with the manager of the restaurant. And a woman and her husband came in for their anniversary and they had dinner. And dessert came out. And she wanted the pulled sugar. Dessert it was pulled sugar like a dome over ice cream, and took back the spoon, he cracked it, it's just kind of shattered. So she started taking the pulled sugar and putting it in her mouth, finished her dessert. And she was talking to her husband, he goes, your tongue is green. She says, what? Oh my God, was that food poison? Is the food dye in there? So the waiter comes out, and the customer is flipping out about the dye. So she wanted to know, he said, well ma'am, there's no natural color that green. We use apple essence, but there is some green dye in there. It's a natural dye. It's a vegetable-based dye. I can't eat this. I'm going to get sick, So assistant manager comes over, or the assistant food manager comes over, comps the whole entire table, tip and all, wine and everything, and sends them on their way with to-go boxes. So I come in the next morning, and the woman's still on the phone calling me about what else we're going to do for her. So I called David in, and he's like, well, I said, you didn't take care of her, man. That's not even, I'm sorry, ma'am, it's made with green apple dye, this is what it is. I did something else. I wouldn't have you go too far. Where do you go? Then the person's not happy. I had a woman one time that got up, stepped on her dress, fell back into a customer, and wanted her dinner paid for, and the customer got wine spilled over them, and I'm like, I'm sorry it happened. I said, but there's certain times that I'm comfortable. You're not going to get good resolve out of the guests. They're not going to be happy. And I always have to say that's when you have to cut your losses. I had a party one time. I was managing a restaurant in Boston. It was across from the Boston Garden at the time, and it was also BU's graduation day. So the restaurant didn't take reservations. It was just packing in. It was a seafood house, and it was Bakari's on Causeway. And we had, all of a sudden, the game's letting out, and graduation's finished up, and the place is just filled with customers, and we got all these big parties. And I had a party at 12 that was just obnoxious when they came in the door. They had to wait 10 minutes, and they had to wait another 10 minutes, and we got their tables together, and they didn't want to sit separately, so we kept offering options. So we had, the dining room probably no bigger than this, maybe filled with 60 or so people, just jam-packed. We had them all along the wall here. There's a little table, too, over here, amongst the rest of the tables that were full. And I was working with the chef in the kitchen, I'm working the floor, going back and forth, and I said, I need you to fire the table of 2 before you do the table of 15. Now, why would I do that? Why would I do that, Vinny?
So they won't be waiting.
2 are going to wait less time than waiting for the 15 to be cooked, right? And they came in like 5 minutes apart. But the two dudes came in 5 minutes after the 15 top did. 15 top took forever to order, they had such checks, and it's just like a waiter's nightmare. So the waiter comes out with the food and puts it on the side, on the tray jack, and the man in charge of the 15 comes over to the waiter and says, "Why are you serving them before you serve my table 15? We were here first." So I interjected, I said, "Sir," I said, "could you please take your seat?" I said, "We're actually serving a party of 2 before we serve a large party." "Well, that's not fair." I said, "How's it not fair?" I said, "It's what I choose to do." And he said, "Well, we want a whole other round of drinks instead of the waiter." I said, "That's not going to happen, sir." I said, "Now I can get your order in the kitchen, I can call it if you want to move forward." He said, "I don't want it." I said, "No," he said, I don't want to pay for it." I said, "I think it's best that you just take your party and leave." And he looked at me, and the cuts at the table looked at him, and I said, "I think it's best you leave." And I told the waiter to start clearing off this table. And I said, "We're even. Don't pay me for drinks, we're even." And he walked away, and and the party was like, "Oh, we're so sorry, I'm so embarrassed." And I'm like, "It's okay, man." But sometimes you have to, I learned at the Peabody, there's unwanted customers sometimes. If you have a problem booking a group with a group, or you have a problem with a customer and the planning end of it, you better damn well be there for that event if you plan it, because they're going to have a problem the day of the event. It's just going to be the way, and you can feel it out. They're novices. I had one here a couple weeks ago. A new woman is in charge of a large company in town for planning. She works for this company in town. It's one of the top 3 companies in the city. We do a lot of business with them. And wanted an awards luncheon for her group. And we have an item on the menu, which I took off, by the way, after last week, called the Victorian platter, which I inherited when I came here. It's a piece of quiche, mixed green salad, cold and sliced turkey, fresh fruit, crackers, and something else. It's a cold plate. Now, how do you cook quiche? You cook quiche, it comes out of the oven, it's under a hot light, you slice it, it goes on the plate. You can't heat the plate up because you got lettuce on there, fruit, and chilled chicken. So it goes into a box with a lid on it, we serve it. So before the event, I was in the meeting planner in our catering manager's office reviewing with this woman on the phone. I just felt something was going to be right. I said, "Get her on the phone. It's the first time we work with her with this party, and this dish is very complicated. I want to make sure she understands what she's getting." So I got called out of the room by something else that was happening, and our catering manager said, "She's okay the whole time, just make sure it's hot." I said, "No, Pam, it's not going to be hot." So Pam neglected to call her back and tell her that, never got back to me, so I forgot about the whole process. I came actually in that day, my chef wife, to make sure we had the quiche freshly made, it was perfect, everything was good for her, and it was fine. Thanked us everything, said everything was great. Younger person trying to make her name, and that's fine, I got a letter next day, service is great, everything's wonderful, but the food was cold, it's not what we expected. So the catering manager came to me and showed me this, and I said, "This is the problem. We got to get her on the phone. This is a 500-person group. We got no complaints from the guests. Nothing came back. People were happy with the food. They thought it was a cold plate. She thought it would be hot. They don't understand why quiche can't be hot. I said, "Man, quiche is only cooked 120-some degrees, 130 degrees. It's sliced. You can't keep reheating it. But when you mix it with cold lettuce and dressings, it's just what it is." So that's what so I called Pam down and I said, "Bring me the documentation, the email you sent her after we talked about the food was not going to be hot." She goes, "I didn't send her an email." I go, "Did you talk to her?" She's like, "No, I didn't talk to her. I forgot." I said, "Okay." So she's got 2 more parties in the next 2 months. I said, "Well, this is an issue because now she's really concerned." Because her closing comment in her letter was, "I'm really upset that I'm unhappy the first event I've had with you, although they've been coming here for a long time. it's just that people didn't care in the past, or all of a sudden now we do care. And I mean, just those comments, I called her personally. So we got her on the phone. She was moving from Cincinnati to Memphis, and we talked to her on speakerphone. And Pam was there, and I said, this is how it's going to go down. We're going to listen to her complaint. I'm going to answer her question in the letter and tell her how the plate is served. I said, now, you need to be prepared. If she says something about that, she says, well, I told them it was going to be hot. You need to be prepared to say, I forgot to tell them, that it was not going to be hot. The customer, she was very sensitive. She told me everything she felt. She was honestly probably a little uncomfortable. I called her. It's like a huge account for us. I mean, it was Smith & Nephew. I mean, that's a big account. So she said she appreciated me calling her. I want first to tell you, the service was excellent. The room looked great. All the food was wonderful. The fruit cup was great. Dessert was great. I got some complaints from the people that the food was a little bit, the quiche was a little bit too cool. It was more than room temperature, less than room temperature. It was really cool. So I explained to her about that, and she said, and I had let Pam know. I said, well, I didn't get that information. I'm sorry. I said, I got the information. I'm sorry you didn't get the fact that it's not a hot plate. So she said, well, obviously it was a mix-up in communication. I'm sorry for that. But I told you what I wanted, and I'm sorry Pam dropped the ball. The customer was quite mad about that. So I said, it won't happen again. I said, we have you coming to a month or so. I personally make sure your food is fine, and let's look at the menus together. And she chose a breakfast for something else, and I suggested serving some turkey bacon or turkey sausage with a regular bacon, because a lot of people don't eat pork, and you have 500 people, they don't like bacon, So she was thankful for that suggestion. So and it was fine. So I think you can't let it get away from you. You have to. I always tell people, when someone's going to bitch at you, the last thing I want to do is get upset with the customer, or get upset with the manager. You know how you all are in a restaurant. I don't want to talk to this guy. I don't want to tell the manager I'm unhappy, But sometimes you're impelled to, and a lot of times the guests will walk away and not say anything. You don't know what's going on. If I'm called to a table, I just shake their hand. Hello, I'm Dan. What can I do for you? I don't give excuses. To me, the customer is always right within a reason, and they should get what they pay for. My answer always is, I'm sorry that fish fillet was too small for you. I'll get you another piece. If I get you something else, I may suggest this instead. No, I just wanted to tell you. That's very often the response. Or else just say, instead of me giving them something, I say, what can I do to make it up to you? Just give me a glass of wine. Okay, fine. And then you're good. The customer knows you heard their complaint, you offered something for them, you didn't offer them the world, you just offered them, first of all, they want to be heard. And secondly, if you're going to throw in a little tidbit on the side, that's fine too. So to me, I love those experiences because, I had a young waiter, a young manager at Peabody, he was petrified of going to tables. I said, Jeremy, just come with me, let's do it together, and I said, the thing is, check on them. You're working the floor, hey, how's everything, And very often we did events there for the Orpheum, or they had people get in and out, and they're always in a hurry, and I gotta be at the theater in 30 minutes, and it's not gonna happen, can't eat here. You have to be honest, I can't seat you. You can get a salad, and you still won't be right in and out in 30 minutes by the time you get down there. So I think it's in all of our careers we come across that, and you have to be, you want to stand your ground and be fair with clients. And sometimes I'm not always right, but you need to make sure that how can you resolve it? It brings value to you. And these people that I've dealt with that in the past will always remember that you've taken the time and corrected for them, because you own it. It's your problem. If they bring it to you, we're always taught in 4-star hotels, you got to follow through right there and make sure the guest is happy. And I've always taken it with me since I've left the Peabody and other places prior. So, do you have any questions on career path? On your own career path? I would say education is going to be the key. Nowadays, it's at least the masters and or higher. You have to come out of 4-year schools with 4-year degrees, and a lot of companies today are willing to pay for your tuition, taking related classes that relate to the industry you're in that will help your career. I've been fortunate in my life to have 3 major jobs after I got out of college, which is very few. In our industry, as chefs, we're taught to stay someplace for a year and a half. If you're no longer learning, you can move on to become an executive chef. You come out of culinary school as a cook, not a chef. Chef takes experience in years. And you can only get that through being in the field and working in the, you can get a degree from culinary school, from books and cooking in class, but that's not the real world. The culinary, we had 20 people that just wash dishes and clean floors for us. That doesn't happen. I could cook all day long and throw the pot in the sink and walk away from it and put my chef's coat on, never be dirty, and just walk away. Someone's washing my chef's coat for me, someone's doing this. And a lot of the kids, as we graduated, said that's unrealistic. Because some hotels you go into, you use the pan, you wash it. The most valuable person in that kitchen, they used to call the casserolier, which is French for dishwasher. If those dishes aren't washed or pots and pans, you have nothing to work with. You know, it's like here, I tell the chefs, don't dump a whole plate of, a whole pot of rice peel off on the dishwasher line. Come on, man, scrape it out, help the guy out. Why is that coming? Why do you, I mean, people just don't understand that, and that's part of it. It's all teamwork and cooperating and throwing yourself in the environment and making it a good work experience and being in the zone. So. That's it?
I have a question.
Sure.
Let's go back to Paul Carey's in Boston. Did that table of 15 get up and walk out?
Yeah, they did, walked out. They left. They were not happy with the guy either. Because he said, I'll leave. I'm like, you're welcome to, sir. As a matter of fact, go ahead. You know, and then they're all like looking around, so. He called me a pipsqueak when he left. So, but Vocari's was an interesting animal. It was a 1920 Italian restaurant that switched to temporary cuisine in the early 90s, and went on this huge, the Boston Restaurant Associates, they are on this huge purchasing of modern restaurants, and the food scene in New York and Boston was crazy in those days. All light sauces and special stuff, and the old guard was dying away as far as like the food preparations and everything. So, I would say experience anything you possibly can. You know, education is key. Find out when your first day of your job where you want to go next in that company. Tag on to that person above you that you want to take the position one day. You know, in the interview process, you want to ask them, you know, what happened to the previous guy I'm replacing? Did he or she leave on their own? Oh no, they got promoted, or else they left. Why they leave? You want to know why. You know, you want to say, what is going to take me to work for your company to succeed? I had one guy tell me, money's in the bank, the staff is at work, and don't sleep with the help. And I'm like, okay, I got that covered. I think the biggest word about to keep money in the bank. So
You and Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, really, isn't that a nightmare? In our industry too, in those days, it was crazy. It was people doing, you know, cocaine in the back room, and it was just rough times, you know. But you get through it. So, but it's hard to be a manager in that situation too, because you're trying to deal with a culture that just is very passive on certain things. So. But anytime you have any questions on like interviewing or any processes, you can. I'm here on campus. You can, if you see me, I'm in the FEC in room 131 on the first floor. So I do dining etiquette class for the graduates for the hotel school. And we also talk about job interviewing and resumes and what to expect in today's culture, how the interviewing process goes. And that's it. Any questions? Vinny? You came in late, you missed the party. Okay.
Well, Dan, I'm going to add one thing to your talk,
Sure.
and then I know these folks have some questions because they're supposed to turn them in.
Okay.
One thing I want to impress upon everybody is that as Dan mentioned earlier on, is that you need to show your value to your employer every day. When Dan mentioned earlier that some hotel GM was making $50 grand a year, and the owner of the hotel said, what are you doing for your 50 grand? That, you can be up here at 50 and you can be making $15 an hour, and it always ends up being the same thing. You all know you've walked into, let's say you walked into some quick service restaurants, and the service has been less than stellar. And there's no please, there's no thank you. You, the customer, are saying thank you to them rather than them saying thank you to you for your business. And these people, employees, do not realize that without you, the customer, they're not getting paid. There's no revenue. If there's no revenue, they're not getting paid. If there's no repeat business, they're not getting paid. So you need, just whatever position you folks end up doing, you gotta show your value every day somehow. If you can equate it to some kind of dollars and cents, that makes the most sense to everything. Anyway, who's got some questions for Dan? I know you've all got some. Career advice. He told you that he was a big casino magnate over at Southland.
Is that your current position now, over at Southland?
No, I'm here. I'm at the university, at the Wilson Conference Center, which manages the conference center here at the Holiday Inn. Yeah. Been here 3 years. It's 3 years in July.
How long did you work at Southland?
11 years.
When you started?
So in dog years is 77 years. I started in '96 and left in '07.
And when they get?
The casinos came through, we got legislation passed in 2005 and opened up in 2006. So I stayed, they actually it wasn't full slots like they have now, it was called video gaming at the time, like the machine had to roll 2 or 3 times to be considered as a game of skill, where you're choosing to stop it versus game of chance. So it was, all the way legislation was written to get it in, but now it's pretty much a full slot place now, so. They're doing quite well. And actually, they were struggling along for a long time. It wasn't until like 2009, there was a big flood in Tunica. And the casinos were closed or flooded for like about 6 months, some of them were. And people went from here across the bridge to Arkansas, and when the casinos reopened, they stayed. And that's what really helped them. Their revenue just went through the sky, and it still is high. So.
They can be pretty well alternative?
Pardon?
They can be pretty well alternative?
Well, they are, because when they opened up, Tunica had reached its saturation point in '96. No, in '98, '99, they had 10 casinos, almost, I think 11 actually. So there was a lot of options for the customer. So Southland started thinking we're going to try and pull that business from the downtown business over across the river, but we were still going to Tunica for a long time. But what's happened is it reached a saturation point, probably like maybe now, maybe 6 or 7 down there. I mean, they've dropped. So it's there's only so much, the dollar goes so far, and the racetrack, when it was a dog track, was the most profitable racetrack in the world. We have some afternoons on a Saturday, they put $1 million through the window on bets. Now keep in mind though, it's called pari-mutuel, which is a French term, which means you're betting against each other. So, you know, it could be $1 million through the window, but your take's probably $100,000 at the end of the day, you know, by the time you do your settlement. Just say $100,000 after putting $1 million through the window, if you multiply that by 7 days a week, that's a quiet day, that's pretty good money.
Right.
The family I work for in Buffalo, New York, every Saturday morning we had to wire a certain amount of money to the owner's wife to be in her checking account to pay the staff for 4 homes that they owned. And they were in business for like 60 years, and they still are today. So, I mean, that just tells you in cash business how money is, you know, how it goes through like that. So we just, you know, they're no longer, the father and mother are no longer involved, they're retired, so it's a different generation now, how that ceases. In those days, they were operating that way, you know, so.
Is that still privately held?
Mm-hmm.
You told that they own the Boston Garden.
Yes, yeah. Boston Garden, Boston Bruins, so. But they're a wonderful family to work for, wonderful people. You know, very good. So. they asked me to come here. They searched me out because I was managing one of their accounts, managing one of the clubs that the guy was a member of. It was a golf club, and I was a chef there, and I was managing that club. And he asked me if I would consider working for him. And he asked me 3 times in 2 years, and I told him no. And he said the 3rd time, I'm not going to ask again. And I said, okay. So and then it all began. So and I love the South. And I wouldn't want to go back up north. Although Boston's hard to swallow. I sure miss Boston a lot. It's a great city. If you've never been there, make sure you go. Well, thank you all for your time.
Let me mention, well, let's hear it for him. But I'm gonna mention one more thing.
Okay.
Dan mentioned the family, the Wilson family. Of course, we've talked about the Wilson family all semester.